Hi, my name is Emily Louie. I'm one of the study abroad advisors here at UC San Diego, and this session is focused on options to study abroad in China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. The first thing I want to express is that I'm going to breeze through the beginning of this program, which talks about the different types of programs. We do have a Canva course on the Study Abroad website that reviews all of this information much further detail. So if you haven't taken that course, I highly recommend that you take that first because it'll give you some background information so that then you can understand more about this program. But I will go over the information really quickly, but just wanted to point out that there is additional information that I'm building upon within this presentation. So the three different ways to study abroad, I try to put them in like three different buckets. So UC EAP, which is UC's own study abroad program, is definitely the most popular way to study abroad in China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. That is probably what a majority of you will be using to study abroad. And so with this program, you're able to earn UC credits, which mean that whatever grades you earn abroad automatically pipe into your UCSD GPA. You don't have to work with admissions. You don't have to take a leave of absence. You don't have to do really a lot of paperwork in the back end to kind of seamlessly merge your study abroad coursework into UCSD's coursework, essentially into your transcript. So that's quite nice. And then on top of that, majority of your financial aid will be able to follow you. So anything that is campus aid based, unfortunately, will not. But other than that, for most students, majority of their aid will follow them, which is quite nice, especially those who are on financial aid. The second most popular option are global seminars. This is run through UCSD and led by UCSD faculty. So you literally travel with a faculty member. Is offered summer session 1 and 2, and you take 2 courses for a total of 8 units. There's not a selection of courses, so typically whatever courses are offered is just what you're taking. But the class sizes are really small, so you're traveling with mostly UCSD students. There are occasionally maybe 1 or 2 other UC students, and again, a faculty member. So you get to know them really, really well. Students have told me that they created, really close friends. They got to know the cohort really well, and their faculty member was able to get to know them well enough to write a lot of recommendation or offer personal recommendations, and the students really enjoy that intimate type of setting with the faculty members. The last kind of bucket of programs are what I want to call other, which means not UCEAP and not also not global exchange. And sorry, global seminars. And so one is our global exchange program, and that is where you can pay UCSD fees and travel somewhere else. There are no programs for global exchange this year in China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, so I'm not going to focus on that program very much. But I did want to let you know that there are also opportunity abroad programs, so OAP programs. That is where you could use a third party provider to study abroad. There are more logistical hoops, so you do have to work with admissions to get the coursework approved. It is not seamless. Some of your aid may or may not follow you. So there are some additional considerations for OAP program, which is why most students end up using an EAP program, which is what I'll focus this presentation on. But I did want to make sure you knew that OAP was an option for any of the students. Again, as I mentioned, UC EAP is probably the most popular option. So they're hands down our largest program partner. It's open only to UC students, so you may meet others that are UC students on it as well. We have partnerships literally all over the world, so you can study abroad in all sorts of countries. But again, I'll highlight the ones in China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. Summer, quarter, year options, and everything I mentioned before that that everything pipes into your GPA. Another popular question is thinking about deadlines and dates and when should I start applying. A really good rule of thumb is that you need to start applying for the program about a year before you actually want to go. So for example, if you want, right now it is fall 2024. If you want to study abroad fall 2025, now's a good time to start thinking about your application and start applying. So I wrote the deadlines because again, each program is different. So we're literally talking thousands of programs. So I would say if you're thinking about fall 2025, November to March is a good time to start applying. For UCAP, the application starts November 20th, even though the deadline is later, I highly recommend applying as close to November 20th as you can, because programs do fill up and sometimes it is first come, first serve. So it's always to your benefit to apply early. And then for spring, I would start applying about May to August, the year before you want to go study abroad. It is a two-part application. Again, our Canva course talks about this in more detail, but you do need to complete the Tritons Abroad application as well as the EAP application. And then as for eligibility, it does vary depending on the program, but most programs require you to at least be a sophomore. And then the GPA requirement can vary as well. I specifically listed on here an sampling of different programs. So it can range anything from 2.5 to 2.8 to 3.0, again, just depending on which program that we're talking about. Okay, so I tried to organize this presentation to answer the most frequently asked questions that students give me. And so one extremely popular question is, I want to learn Chinese, which program should I go on? And you can learn Chinese on any of the programs, but there are certain programs that are really custom tailor fit for language acquisition. So you can think of them as almost like summer intensive language programs. So the first one is Chinese in Beijing. It is a partnership with Peking University. It's offered in the summer for 8 weeks, and you take 2 intensive Chinese language courses, which is the equivalent of a year of Chinese in a semester. So when I say it is intense, I am not joking. It is very, very, very intense. The other one is Chinese in Taipei, in Taiwan. So that is partnership with National Taiwan University. It's offered in the summer for 6 weeks. So note that it's 2 weeks shorter than the one Chinese in Beijing. You take 1 Chinese language course and then 1 exploring Taiwan course. So it's a little less intense than the Chinese in Beijing program because you're only taking 1 language course, but you also get this exploring Taiwan course, which is where you do field trips, you learn about culture, you learn about society, you learn about all kinds of just like great things about Taiwan in general. So if you want to learn language, but also learn a little bit more, I would say the Taiwan program is really great. If you just want to focus on Chinese, and that could be Chinese in Beijing could be a good program for you. The other big difference between the two programs is traditional versus simplified. So obviously in Taiwan, you're going to be learning traditional writing versus in Beijing, you're going to be learning simplified. A lot of students sometimes ask me which one's better. I wouldn't say either one's better than the other. It's just a matter of personal preference and what you want to learn. Universally, probably simplified is what you're going to find around the world, just because that's what mainland China uses. But that said, many people do say that if you learn traditional, it's easier to learn simplified, whereas if you learn simplified, it's harder to learn traditional. I've also anecdotally heard many people say that if you learn traditional, is a lot easier to learn Japanese or other language. So again, just it's up to personal preference on which one, but that is another huge difference between the two programs. But again, both of them are during the summer, and both are good options for language acquisition. All right. Oops. Let me go back. All right. And then as for if you want to study abroad in China, but language acquisition is not necessarily like the primary focus. So maybe you want to take like a Chinese course, but you want to take other things. Here's some options for in China. And I'll talk about Taiwan or Hong Kong in a few later slides, but for now I'm just kind of comparing, contrasting the programs just in China. So obviously the first one you have is Peking University, also known as PKU. It is located in Beijing. You can only study abroad there for spring or the year. So keep in mind that if you study abroad for the spring, you are missing winter and spring quarter at UCSD. Students with a PRC passport are not eligible for this program, unfortunately. It is a PKU decision, and so it's not something that UCP or UCSD has limited on there. So that's just something to keep in mind. The other option, if you want to go into stay in Beijing, would be the one on the bottom, which is Tsinghua University. That is only offered in the spring, and I would say is best. And also PRCs, unfortunately, passport students are not eligible for this program at all. So think of it as everything in Beijing, and unfortunately, is not available to our PRC passport holders. But this university, I would say, is primarily for those interested in engineering, especially economics and also business. So that's who tends to attend that university. And then if you're interested in studying abroad in Shanghai, your option is Fudan University. They do accept PRC passport students. So if you are a PRC passport holder, this is the one option for you to study abroad in China. This is probably our most popular option because they have the most number of courses in English. So PKU and Tsinghua also do offer courses in English, but they don't have nearly the number that Fudan does. So that's something to keep in mind. They do have a number of courses in the humanities and social sciences, and they also host the Shanghai Summer International School, which I'll talk about later. Which is, the next over on the right, you'll see that's Shanghai Summer. So think of Shanghai Summer versus the other Chinese intensive programs I talked about. Those programs on the previous slide were focused on primarily Chinese language acquisition. And Shanghai Summer would be like if you just want to take summer school. So you could take Chinese courses or you could take non-Chinese courses. But it's taught by international faculty, which is quite nice. And again, it is located in Shanghai. The other option for you for studying abroad in China is the Summer Global Internship. This is a CIEE program, which is a study abroad provider that's very well known and well regarded. And so with this program, you will only take an internship, will take no courses. You're also not necessarily affiliated with a specific university. And so basically you go to your internship and you receive units. I'm going to answer the most frequently asked question about this program right now. You do not get paid for the internship. You are doing it for units. And so that's something to keep in mind. The other question that I often get about the Summer Global Internship Program is, what kind of internships are available? And every year, CIE and UCAP, have to assess which companies are available and who's willing to accept an intern. So the list does vary each year. But that said, I would say as a rule of thumb, you can start looking into the industries that are popular in Shanghai, and most likely you're going to have more options with these specific industries. So for example, students who are studying business, finance, communications, I would say computer science, computer engineering, you're going to have a good number of options for internships, and I would say I would feel fairly confident that you could be placed there. If you are studying, UCSD just has so many pre-med, pre-health students. If that is something that you're hoping to find as an internship in Shanghai, it's going to be very, very limited. I would also say for psychology too. And the main ones that we see that are just have very, very limited options, if any options. And so I would reconsider programs. I think that there's a lot of really great programs for the health sciences and psychology for summer internship programs, but unfortunately Shanghai tends to just be really, really limited. So just keep that in mind. Okay, as for options, if you want to perform research, we have our Research in Taipei program. Again, that's a partnership with National Taiwan University. It's a summer program. And again, you get to take that Exploring Taiwan course, and then you do lab research. So it is a very similar program to that Chinese in Taipei program, except the difference is with this one, you're doing research in the Exploring Taiwan course. With the other one, you're doing Chinese language in the Exploring Taiwan course. So you spend about 30 weeks in a lab performing research. And again, as I mentioned, Exploring Taiwan includes cultural activities and excursions, and a lot of students report really enjoying that experience. Research in Hong Kong is solely focused on research alone. So you don't have any additional coursework. You're just spending all of your time doing research. There are a limited number of topics that you can research in Hong Kong. So I do have a QR code that has the full list of topics. For the Research in Taipei program, I would say we have a pretty wide variety of options available. So it isn't quite as limited as research in Hong Kong. But again, as for the differences between the programs, the big one is, do you want to be in Taipei or do you want to be in Hong Kong? There's different pros and cons of both those settings. But also, do you want to be spending all of your time doing research, or do you want to do your research in like one class? So like a little less research, but then to free yourself up for some coursework, or just for one course, or do you just really be wanting to focus on that? And the other thing is, what do you want to be researching? So if one of the topics that you want to be researching is on that list, great. If it's not on the list of research in Hong Kong, I would count that out and just focus on research in Taipei. All right. So now we're going to talk about Hong Kong programs. Generally with the programs in China, students have a pretty easy time choosing between them, um, because there's pretty stark differences between their limitations. The Hong Kong University students tend to need a little bit more advising on which one is best fit for them. They can be very confusing because all of their names have the word Hong Kong in it too, which doesn't help. So I tried my best to focus these slides on the comparing and contrasting them so that it's easy to tell what the differences are. Our most popular university in Hong Kong for UCSD students to study abroad is Chinese University of Hong Kong. It's our oldest partner. We've spent the most number of students there. Students love that experience. It's really popular there. They do offer courses in Mandarin. So if you want to study abroad in Hong Kong, but you also want to learn a little bit of Mandarin, keep that in mind. They do have courses in Mandarin. There's a lot of international students, and then I'd also say they have a lot of international student support. They have an orientation. They can pair you with a buddy. They pretty much every support service office that you would expect to have at UCSD, they would have there. So in general, it is one that I highly recommend. If you have any sort of accommodations, I would highly recommend Chinese University of Hong Kong. They just tend to offer a lot of support for our students. Certainly compared to the other universities. The other two options are there's Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and I would say that this one was based off of UC Berkeley, so it feels very similar to a UC, which is quite nice. As you can guess from the name, it's very focused on science and technology, so I really highly recommend only for STEM majors to consider this as even an option. Is not ideal for GEs because the way that it's structured is that you're admitted into a specific department. And so you're somewhat limited in only taking courses in that department. So for example, if you're admitted to mathematics, you may have difficulty trying to take courses outside of mathematics. That said, they do have research and independent study courses available, which is quite nice. And students who are really focused on academics tend to enjoy their experience there. And then there's University of Hong Kong. This is the #1 rated program in Hong Kong. It is also our only program of the three that's located on actual Hong Kong Island, which is good and bad, right? So it's cool that it's located on Hong Kong Island. That also means you're most likely going to be commuting. So the commute can be quite far. It can be up to 40 minutes each way. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind is very, very academically rigorous. And so many students, either tend to see a GPA drop or they tend to spend a lot of time in the library. So that's something to keep in mind when you're considering University of Hong Kong. Here's just a little bit more compare and contrasting between the different universities. Again, the one thing to note for sure is that you can take courses in Mandarin at CUHK and you cannot in the other ones. Yeah, and so, but otherwise, the GPA requirements are about the same. And then, sorry, the other thing is what you want to study. So, again, I would say STEM majors, then I would consider science and technology. For the others, it just kind of depends on what you're studying. But again, majority of students end up going to Chinese University of Hong Kong, and I highly recommend them. Here's a map of Hong Kong. So as you can see, University of Hong Kong is the only one that's actually located on Hong Kong Island. But that said, it is fairly, public transportation is quite good in Hong Kong. So it is quite easy to get around relatively. Okay, and then you have for Taiwan, it makes things easy because there's only one university in Hong Kong where we can send our students, which is National Taiwan University. It is like the Harvard of Taiwan. It is a #1 ranked university, so it's very prestigious. You could go fall, spring, or year. They have courses in both English and traditional Chinese. Although English courses may be limited. If you have any sort of disability or request any accommodations, this is also a really great university for you because they are able to make much more accommodations than the other universities that I've listed so far. You have a choice between apartment or dorm for housing, and many residents have a really, really great time here NTU. I also want to highlight our global seminar that's focused in Taiwan. It's called How Shaky Structures Become Safest Structures in Taiwan. It is taught by one of our UCSC structural engineer faculty and held during summer session 2. You get to take 2 courses, Sensors and Data Acquisition for Structural Engineering and Signal Processing and Spectral Analysis. You do not need to be a UCSD student to attend this global seminar, so we highly recommend it. If you are a structural engineer interested in Taiwan, this is just a once in a lifetime, really unique opportunity that we highly encourage you to attend. I just wanted to follow up. So I gave you a lot of information about a lot of the programs. We do have drop-in advising on Monday and Thursday afternoons and Friday mornings. Please join us. We are here to help you. So keep that in mind. We also have a Canvas module where you can learn more about getting started. And then you always can send us a virtual advising center message if you have any simple questions too. We have a couple of fall events coming up, so they could be found on our website as well on top of this QR code. And then UCAP is actually hosting a virtual study abroad fair where you can learn more specifics about each one of these programs. So we highly encourage you to attend on October 23rd. And thank you so much for your time.